Hi everybody, this is Greg Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Michael, who's an intermediate photographer from Chicago. Michael says that he was in a cafe with a friend of his and saw this beautiful window light, and he took some candid shots and then started to give his friend a little bit more direction here, and he ended up liking the images where there was more direction. He said that he shot with a Nikon D300, effective focal length of around 50 millimeters, and at ISO 800 exposed the file for f4 at 1/125th of a second. And under questions and comments, Michael said that his main concern about this image is the background. He said that he questioned the green back here in the corner and also this area where this other person is sitting and even the chairs. So mainly it's just wondering about the background. Let's get right into it. I love the quality of light here. Michael has a very beautiful portrait subject, and we would call this, if we were talking about sort of formal portraiture and using terms, we could call this beauty lighting. And beauty lighting is characterized by most of the time a large, broad, soft light source that's a little bit higher. The center of it is a little bit higher than the portrait subject, so that you get sort of a feeling of even light with some drop shadows that are happening underneath some of the features or all of the features of the face. You really get a sense of that drop shadow here, and you get a very powerful sense of a soft, broad light everywhere else on the portrait subject. The other thing that's so beautiful about this quality of light is just what's happening with the light in the eyes. You have this feeling of a broad, soft light, but when it comes to the eyes, the light seems to have a sparkle to it. You've got a really beautiful catch light there and a dynamic place in the eyes. So having a beautiful portrait subject with this type of lighting combined can work very, very well. Somebody that has an overall beautiful face, beautiful features of the face, having this quality of light where you want to see all the features of the face, then having just a little bit of dimension with that high to low feeling of the light, and also a nice feeling of quantity of light and sparkle of light in the eyes. Really gorgeous from a lighting standpoint. So very well seen in terms of seeing this light and then using it to great advantage. The gesture here to me really goes along with the beauty lighting. Very soft gesture. Head is slightly tilted. Head is slightly turned. Head's leaning back a little bit. The rhythm of that with this person's hair, the soft lines of the hair framing the face, soft light, soft pose, and then just the hand is really doing the same thing in terms of a gesture. All of this is just working out beautifully, and I agree with Michael that the background here is very challenged. One of the things that I think about almost right away when I look at this image is, wouldn't it be great if we could have more of a square image, more like this, but we actually had this in the corner here? Because if we go to square, now the idea of formal symmetry, where we pin these two corners out with two sort of signs or sort of square objects in those corners, the shoulders are going to be very formally symmetrical down here. Maybe we have a little bit of the chair, and that rhymes the hand. Have the portrait subject centered, which works great in the square, and we take great advantage now of one of the major diagonals in the square, which works really well because of formal symmetry. We end up with the feeling of two halves. Something I just want to say here real quick is that in the same way that I think about black and white being so much easier, I think about shooting square being so much easier on the photographer. Centering is something that's sort of natural for us to do, and when you're shooting square, it's congruent with the framing device. It just makes it easier to go out and just shoot in an offhanded way. Much less challenging from a design standpoint. It's just something to think about. If a subject matter seems to be really dense, you're struggling with the background, you're struggling with layers of information, start to try and see in square, and that could really help. So one of the really cool things about Adobe Photoshop CS4 is something called content-aware scaling, and that's going to help us solve the problem in this image in a real simple way. All we're going to do is we're going to go to the polygonal lasso, and we're going to make a rough selection around the portrait subject here. We're going to do some scaling, but right now what we're doing is we're creating a selection where we're going to protect the portrait subject from the scaling that we're going to do. And don't have to get real specific with this, pretty rough. I'm going to go to Select, Save Selection, and I'm just going to, since we know that this person's name is Kristen, I'm going to name this Kristen and hit OK, and then drop that selection. Let's go ahead and copy the background for a second, pretend like we actually have good workflow. That should have already been done. And then we're going to go to Edit, content-aware scale. When we do that, we're going to, as part of our options up here, have the option to choose to protect part of the image, and we've already made the selection over what we want to protect, and we call that Kristen. So there it is right there, it shows up, and we're going to choose that as the part that we want to protect from the scaling, and now Photoshop is going to keep Kristen from being scaled, and we're going to magically be able to push that painting right over into this pinned out corner right there. Just come right over to the shoulder, double click, and then would need to come in and add a layer mask here and do a little bit of work to clean the mask up. And I've already done that just to save some time, so we can do this under 10 minutes, and then I would come in and I would crop to right here. And so let's go to this file where I've already done that work, and that's what it looks like. And on this layer, in addition to playing with the mask in between the two layers and simplifying that left hand side, I also came in and cloned this out right here, which was left behind. And I also did just a little bit of retouching on the face, and you can see that along the area of the chin, just very subtle, just a little bit of touch up and digital gardening there. When I get to here in this image, and I still say, well, you know, the background now is to me much more unified, and I've simplified this and made it a lot more about the main idea, but color is still an issue. I've got the green back there. What could I do? Well, I could come in and I could make this more of a blue-gray, sort of have blue-gray here, and pop the feeling of sort of blue-green eyes out. But then I also have this overall color cast that's happening from the tungsten lights inside and the wood panel and the bounce light and all that. And I just start to think, you know what, there's a lot going on with color here that's presenting a challenge. Why not just go to black and white? Black and white, so much of the time in portraits, is so much more evocative, and her face, in terms of having the lighter coloring, and then the eyeliner that she's wearing are making her eyes very dramatic. That'll be even more dramatic in black and white. I go to channels, throw this away real quick, and you know, the green channel here is just almost by itself, is just almost stunning. Select all, Apple copy, go back to RGB, go back to layers, paste that in there. From here, I'd just do a little bit of shaping. One of the things that's happening in this image is because the hand is closer than the face, the hand is taking over a little bit. You know, in a perfect world in posing, we might get the hand under the chin and back even a little bit more. We can cut down on that now with a move in Photoshop, and I might give a little bit more shaping to the face and a little bit more of a dark right hand corner up here to match this corner. I'm just going to do all that work very quickly here, just sort of in a rough way to give you the idea. Blank layer, soft light blending mode, black as my foreground color, and I'm going to go to 10% opacity on this brush and 0 hardness on the brush. And what I'm going to start to do is just shade. I'm going to say there's a shadow there, let me shade that. There's a feeling of some shadow there. Let me shade this part of the face. Let me come in and shade over here. Let me come in and give the eyebrows a little bit here, a little bit on the forehead to cut down on the feeling of so much light up there. Let's just create a little bit of a feeling of a movement, maybe shadow coming off of here. We have to sort of pay attention to direction of the light, and I'm trying to do that, just looking at the shadows. Let's cut down on the hand here. Let's make this shadow look bigger on the lower left-hand side of the hand. Let's come in and shade this middle part, and let's shade the back part. And as we do that and create the feeling of a little bit more texture, then we can cut down on the feeling of the hand. I might add a mask here and make that a little bit more subtle, because if I start to add contrast in there in addition to darkening, that'll actually make this part of the image come forward even more. We could also, if we really wanted to spend a lot of time on this image, we could come in and do a little bit of scaling work down in here, but for today's purposes, we're not going to do that. I'm just going to come in and create a little bit of a vignetting mask and create more symmetry from right to left in terms of darkness up there. And you know, this image right now, to me, is just really working very, very well. This is the difference between the color and the black and white, and then this is the difference between where we started and where we ended up. I'd love to hear your feedback about this critique. Huge thank you to Michael for sharing this really stunning portrait with us on the Mindful Eyes Daily Critique.